the last movie I reviewed, I needed something that was just dumb, stupid, something that wasn't malicious. A film that didn't feel like it was personally trying to rob me of experiencing joy in life. Now, as I've mentioned many times before, I live in Texas. I'm a Texan. Family's been here for many generations. Texans like guns. It's a valid stereotype. It's one I can't really argue that much, even though I myself don't own one. I wouldn't mind owning one. It's a money thing primarily. But you know what happens when loving guns becomes so crazy even a Texan can't understand it? This is Dear Wendy. This movie has one of the slowest starts of any movie I've ever reviewed. Basically, our main character, Dick, doesn't want to work in the mines like his father. His nanny supports this viewpoint. Eventually, because of circumstances, he ends up buying a toy gun for somebody, but then decides to keep it for himself rather than give it to the person. And then he learns that the toy gun isn't a toy at all, it is an actual gun. So he decides to name the gun Wendy. There. I just saved you 22 minutes of your life. Oh, and Allison Pill here is supposedly flat-chested. I swear to you, this is a crucial plot point, as well as a flat-out lie, which any Google search can tell you. So Dick meets another kid who also likes guns, and the two of them walk around carrying guns all the time, and take them out and do some occasional target practice and talk about how much they love their guns, and it makes them feel big and strong and confident, and it eliminates all the feelings of inadequacy that they had for living in this mining town but not working in the mine. This doesn't seem like a great idea to me. Wanting to share this feeling of personal power and belief in yourself that only comes from owning a gun, Dick recruits the local town misfits and forms a little support group where they can all have guns and they can all learn to feel better about themselves because they have guns. Now, they're all pacifists. This is very important. They tell you multiple times, we are pacifists. The gun is just for target practice and emotional bonding. The group decides to call themselves the Dandies and sets up headquarters in an abandoned part of the mine. Yeah, the very same mine that the main character wasn't comfortable going down into to work in, now he hangs out in recreationally. They quickly create their own little language, calling things good sport or dandy when they're good, and then referring to their hideout as the Temple, and so on and so on. And every member of the group ends up with a gun or two, except for Freddy, the youngest member, because he has his heart set on a very particular gun that he can't quite afford yet. These are adults. I mean, you're talking early 20s, mid 20s is what these... They're post-high school, these kids. And they're acting like 4-year-olds, building their secret clubhouse with their secret phrases and their secret words. And oh, and there's poetry readings.
Lee is cold as ice. Grant is hot as hell. I think they are both real nice. And I hope it all ends well.
Yeah, that's the level of sophistication that we're talking about here. A little bit later, Allison Pill takes Dick aside to tell him that, you know what? This idea is working. I really am feeling better about myself. Everybody's feeling better about themselves. And look, my boobs are bigger. Yeah, that's an actual plot point in the movie. Owning a gun has filled Allison Pill with so much confidence that her breasts have grown bigger. Now, I have heard a lot of nonsense about guns over the years, but this is the first time I'm hearing about them promoting boob growth. I really feel like they ought to advertise that more. Occasionally, the entire group likes to dress up in outlandish clothing and dance and twirl around on the main street downtown, calling it a parade, because nobody will pick on them anymore, and they are free to be themselves. Alright, look. I get the idea the appeal of finding your own clique. I do. I think it's great to find people who don't judge you, who you can develop inside jokes with and obsess over your passions. I get all that. And it's good for people to find a community for themselves. It really is. But my God, man, dressing up in capes and dancing and twirling around Main Street in a mining town and insisting on calling yourself dandy? You're just begging to get beaten up. And honestly, that's all it's going to take for your whole world to come crashing down. Because your entire newfound confidence, your entire new sense of self, comes from the idea that I have a gun, or I have a gun, wherever you're carrying it, I have a gun, so nobody can pick on me ever again. Even though you yourself have clearly stated the gun is not to be used for violence, it's not to be used to threaten people, it's just the fact that I have it that makes me strong, and makes me able to be my best self. Yeah, but if you insist on flying your freak flag that high in everybody's face, all it's going to take is one person to punch you in the face because you're dancing around in a cape in front of them on Main Street, and all of a sudden your whole plan goes to hell, doesn't it? I am by no means saying that they should not let their freak flag fly. You try saying it 5 times fast. I am by no means saying they shouldn't let their freak flag fly. Maybe they should just fly it a little lower.
And they gave me the greatest accolade a Danny can get.
Congratulations, Dick.
They congratulated me with the special brideshead stutter, which we had all agreed to say for special occasions.
Lower than that. But everything is going to change when Dick's nanny's grandson, Sebastian, comes into his life. Apparently, this is such a small town that the sheriff decides to use Dick as Sebastian's probation officer. See, Sebastian killed a guy with a gun. And that's the kind of thing you normally want to find a 20-year-old to use as a probation officer for. Especially when that 20-year-old is known to dance around downtown dressed up in a cape and calling himself a dandy. That's the kind of fella that's going to keep a murdering youth in line. So Dick decides that the best way to bring some discipline into this young hoodlum's life is to invite him to be a dandy. And Sebastian only agrees so that he can still play with guns, which the sheriff specifically forbade him to do. Doing great as a probation officer so far, giving a gun to the hands of a person who murdered somebody with a gun, a convicted felon. Even the actor can't believe he's trapped in this movie.
Well, what do you think?
You guys are completely nuts.
Sebastian does his best to fit in with the group, so he goes and steals or buys. We're never told. I'm assuming steals just because of the character. All of the guns at the local gun store so Freddy could finally get the gun he's wanted for so long. He went and took every gun and said, okay, which one of these is the one that you want? And then we never find out what happens to this huge cache of guns that they have. But the idea is, if Freddy can finally have his gun, he won't get beat up anymore, because Sebastian says dandies never get beat up in school. That's an accepted truth in their group. Yeah, dudes prancing around in capes and calling themselves a dandy would never get beat up in high school. That would be silly. Possibly the most disturbing part of their special language is that they want to make sure that their guns never wake up, which means using them to kill somebody. So frightened are they of the concept of their gun waking up and being used for violence that they don't even say the word kill around their guns, for fear that it would wake up the gun. So they refer to killing as loving, to trick the guns. So they refer to the act of killing as an act of loving. That is some screwed up stuff right there. Sebastian makes the mistake of firing Wendy at the target range, leading Dick to have some kind of nervous breakdown because how dare another man touch his woman? Unable to be with Wendy now that she's been sullied by another man, Dick puts Wendy away and takes up another gun. This actually matters. Sebastian reveals to the group that his grandmother, who was Dick's nanny, has gone a little bit crazy. She's terrified of the local gangs. Now, Another character has also mentioned the gangs earlier in the film, and he's scared of them as well, but we've seen no evidence of these gangs. The police have made no mention of these gangs. I'm fairly certain these gangs don't exist at all. Now, Dick decides that the Dandies are going to do a good deed, and they're going to help his former nanny walk the streets safely. See, it's his nanny's sister's birthday, and he wants the Dandies to assist her in walking across the street to visit her sister. So they sit down and they start mapping out the route. You're going to stand at this corner. You're going to keep an eye from this sharpshooter position. It really is set up like a Secret Service detail. The amount of care and concern and making sure all the angles are covered. All of this to help a little old lady cross the street. And at no point does anybody suggest that 5 kids with guns might be a little bit of overkill to help an old lady cross the street. Everybody in this group takes every part of this as deadly serious. While she's walking with the Dandies, the nanny stumbles over a curb and a cop races to try and prevent her from falling, which causes the nanny to wig out, pull a sawed-off shotgun out of her purse, and kill the cop in the street. I'm not leaving anything out. That's what happens. The Dandies then panic and take the nanny to their secret hideout. She just shot a cop in front of the whole town. She just murdered a police officer. Maybe, just maybe, you let the police arrest her for, murder. Because up until this point, the Dandies have done nothing wrong. They did not show their guns. The cops don't know the Dandies have guns. They have done nothing wrong. Then old lady wigs out and murders somebody. And the Dandies help the criminal escape the scene of the crime. I don't know why. The cops arrange for a prisoner exchange. If the Dandies will hand over the nanny, everything will be fine. But the boys don't trust the sheriff in charge because of the type of gun he carries. They say that the man who carries that kind of gun can't be trusted. And they turn out to be right when all of a sudden all these other officers and snipers come out of hiding when the deal is blown. Okay, seriously. Old lady is crazy and killed the cop. She needs to be arrested. But what's up with the snipers and everything? It's an old lady who wigged out. You cut a deal with the people who said, yes, we will hand her over to you. What is up with having the army there? And the only reason the army of cops knows that the kids have guns is because they told the cops as part of the prisoner exchange, like, hey, we'll peacefully hand over the nanny, but we all get to keep our guns, right? To which the cops must have said, wait, you guys all have guns? Then they said, yes, you can keep your guns. I don't know about the particular gun laws in the state they're in. But at least morally, these kids have still not done anything wrong. The only thing they did was take the old woman away from the scene of the crime. Not great, but the old lady's the murderer. And then they contacted the cops and said, we would like to give you the murderer. So I still don't understand where all of this is coming from. If you think that doesn't make sense, hold on, because we're kicking into high gear here. So things are pretty bad, right? I mean, the cops want to kill the Dandies instead of just arresting them for walking a crazy old lady across the street. So what are the Dandies going to do? Are they going to hide their precious guns and turn themselves in, even though they didn't do anything wrong? Are they going to hand over the murderer again? No, of course not. Dick decides that they're going to go ahead with the original mission, no matter what it takes. They're taking the nanny to visit her sister. They are going to go out in the public, on the streets, with an army of cops who are armed and looking to shoot these guys. They're going to walk out there with their guns and cover the nanny so she can visit her sister. They are going to start a shootout with the police to try and get this old woman the rest of the way across the street. Sorry, I said old woman, didn't I? I meant murderer. And nobody has a problem with this idea. None of them. Before they leave for their suicide mission, Dick writes a very long and winding letter to his former gun, Wendy, which the cops took when they raided the temple while the kids were hiding in a secret door behind the temple. This letter is what gives us the name of the movie, because he's writing a letter to his gun, Dear Wendy. And in this long and rambling letter, he says, among other crazy things, that he wishes Wendy could be the gun that killed him. And so the whole thing ends in a massive shootout with the police. And again, I want to reiterate how we got here. We ended up at this shootout because the kids took an old woman across the street to visit her sister. At no point do any of the dandies think that this is a bad idea. They all see it as a natural progression. Helping an old lady across the street, she shoots the cops, so we end up in a shootout with an army of cops. And at no point do any of the cops attempt to arrest the kids or say, put down your weapons. Although, to be fair, by the end, the kids have killed quite a number of police. By the end, Dick and Sebastian are the only ones left alive, with cops everywhere. Sebastian actually spots Wendy, the gun, sitting on the street, because apparently one of the cops that was shot felt like carrying around a piece of evidence during a shootout. They raided the hideout, found the one gun that wasn't attached to a person, took that gun, and then several hours later decided to use that piece of evidence as a weapon during a shootout. I don't think that's how the legal system works. Anyway, Sebastian realizes that he and Dick aren't going to make it. And he wants to make up things to Dick for touching his gun in the first place. So he grabs Wendy and proceeds to do exactly like he read in Dick's letter. He shoots Dick seconds before the police snipers can get him. The end. The final fate of the nanny and Sebastian? No clue. What is... The first hour of this movie is as boring as humanly possible. It is a group of kids discover they like guns and they make up a secret society. That's the first hour of the movie. And then suddenly these kids who spend an hour talking about pacifism are in a shootout with the police, despite the fact that none of them broke the law. All they did was help an old lady across the street. The two parts of this movie make zero sense together. There is no connection between the plot of the first half and the plot of the second half of the movie. It's like the writer was too lazy to actually tie the movie together. He wrote two little short films that just used the same characters and stuck them next to each other and hoped they'd just grow together. And how do I know that the writer was lazy? How do I know that this comes down to the writer? Because this entire movie is done with a first-person narrator, which is one of the laziest ways to write the movie. He voiceovers the entire movie, telling us what's happening as it's happening, because it is so much easier to write a first-person narrator than it is to write a decent story. It's easier to say what characters are feeling and doing rather than showing us. If you're lazy and not very good at writing. And so this is what you end up with. You end up with a first-person narrated piece of garbage that makes no sense at all. The only excuse for using first-person narration is if you're going to do something really clever with it. Spoiler alert! This movie does not do something very clever with first-person narration. No. What it does is suck. I'm done.